Features ship, metrics looks good, but the product ends up fragmented, fragile, and weighed down by fixes and tech debt. And users feel it. Why does this happen? Do processes and KPIs shift the focus? Or is the ticket factory blind to the bigger picture, just a mindset that's hard to avoid? Probably it's a bit of everything. The good news is we've got someone who knows this problem from the inside. So, let's not rush to conclusions. Please welcome Maxim Leykin, Head of Engineering at Bamboo Agile, PhD, lecturer and a practitioner with a real engineering depth. And Alet, a great conversation partner. Maxim, great to have you on the podcast.
Hi Alex, thanks for having me.
So, today's topic is the lack of product engineering mindset among developers and the ways to address it. No moralizing, just experience, cases and countermeasures. This is Agile Redemption. I am Antonuk. Here we go.
When chaos tears processes apart and teams wander in search of the truth, there comes a moment of change.
Welcome to the Agile Redemption, a podcast about software delivery, engineering practices, and the sins we commit in their name.
Maxim, before we dive in, could you tell our listeners a bit about your background and what you focus on at Bamboo Agile? Just a short question.
Sure. I started my IT career more than 20 years ago as a C++ programmer, then switched to Java and Android development. Since then, I have participated in more than 15 mobile projects of various sizes in different roles, from a programmer to a team lead and project manager. Since 2015, I have been working as an engineering and delivery manager with a primary focus on mobile and cross-platform projects for IoT, automotive, and fintech domains. As a head of engineering in Bamboo Agile, I am responsible for the company's technical strategy and expertise growth, estimating and architecting new projects, consulting and assistance with complicated technical issues, prototyping, and management of pilot and internal projects.
Thanks, Maxim. Let's go to our main topic. As mentioned, we often hear about teams that don't really think about value beyond the ticket. If you see this as a problem, where do you think the root cause typically lies? Is it missing access to full product context, a lack of breadth and critical thinking, or a reluctance to take ownership?
Developer teams are not monolithic. They consist of people with different skills, seniority, mindsets, and levels of responsibility. If we speak about junior or mid-level developers, probably it's okay for them to close tickets, as they're just not capable of optimizing something for the broader context. And attempting to do so with insufficient skills can be even harmful. Also, there are people who don't feel comfortable taking too much responsibility. Not because of insufficient skills, but because of their mindset, and it's also normal. Senior and experienced developers who are ready to take more feature and product responsibility should be encouraged to do so by giving more product context, participation in planning and refinements, user interviews. It's important for management to persuade developers that their thoughts and opinions are very welcome and can be of great help.
Okay, that's solid theory. So let's get practical. Ideally from your own experience. Can you recall a case where the team delivered exactly to plan, yet the product metrics barely moved? What went wrong and what was done next?
This is a very common situation. There was a fintech application with web and mobile versions. One of the features of the web version was to display complicated charts with stock prices and currency exchange rates. At some point, the product management team decided to duplicate this functionality for the mobile client. Much effort has been spent by the dev team and the feature has been delivered on time. But then it turned out to be one of the most inconvenient and rarely used features of the mobile client. On a smartphone's small screen, the charts looked tiny, unattractive, and practically unusable. After it became clear, it was decided to rethink the UI concept for the mobile client and display data in a different way compared with the web version.
Yeah, that's doubly frustrating. When a manager sets a task, it gets done, but for nothing. And no one notices because everyone just keeps doing their job correctly. Based on this, what should engineers do before coding to make sure a feature is worth working on? And at which stages should this happen?
At least one representative from the dev team, typically the development lead, should step in as early as possible. On a stage of discovery and requirements analysis, the developer's role would be to flag feasibility and challenge assumptions. On a stage of prototype and design reviews, to surface hidden costs or complexity early. On a stage of sprint planning, to confirm technical readiness and that the success metrics are instrumentable. Absence of engineering voice on any of these stages causes negative impact like over-budgeting or even complete project failure if technical limitations of the target platform were ignored. As an example of the latter situation, I can recall a case when the team tried to implement an iOS application with the service constantly running in the background, which is in fact prohibited by iOS.
Okay, and from early checks to the actual process, which practices at the product engineering interface help engineers make sure their work really addresses user pain points during development?
In my opinion, it's a very good practice to involve engineers in user research, discovery calls, and roadmap discussions, so they can directly hear actual user needs. Another useful practice for developers is to be in users' shoes. Let me give you one real example. Some years ago, I was involved as a tech lead in the development and support of a rich functional mobile navigation app with a large customer base. Such applications are very much about user experience, as they are used while driving, and thus should be clear and reliable. I asked all engineers from the team, both developers and quality assurance engineers who had cars, to use our app every day when driving from home to work and other regular driving. I did the same. You can't imagine how many useful improvements were introduced and how many small bugs or shortcomings were fixed thanks to this practice.
Yeah, well, that's clever. Okay, what other concrete tips can you truly motivate developers to think about the long-term success of the parts they are working on? And how can we foster this critical thinking within a project?
I would mention several tips. It is very important to help developers see how their code impacts other parts of the system and business outcomes. Regularly expose the team to the real user feedback and pain points, bugs that became nightmares, technical debt that slowed the team, or clever design choices that saved time later. Another thing is to encourage developers to think, to ask, and to doubt. Developers are often afraid to suggest an alternative solution or question a requirement because they fear being seen as uncooperative or slowing down the project. To create a safe, comfortable, and blameless space for discussions is a sole leadership responsibility, and that is the foundation of a product mindset within the team. Another challenge is that the effectiveness of this mindset is hard to measure. One way to tackle this is through a goal-setting framework that aligns individual and team efforts with broader company objectives. Such frameworks are called OKRs, Objectives and Key Results. When implemented correctly, OKRs can effectively steer developers toward creating user value. A typical OKR consists of an objective, which is an ambitious qualitative goal, and several key results, which are quantifiable metrics that measure progress toward the objective. Just an example. A team's objective might be to enhance the user onboarding experience, and the key results could be increase new user activation rate from 25% to 40%, decrease the average time to first value from 5 minutes to 2 minutes, reduce support tickets related to onboarding by 20%, so on. These metrics directly reflect user experience and satisfaction, guiding developers to focus on the most impactful work.
So, in that case, who should be responsible for setting the team's OKRs? And how do you evaluate individual developers against them when several people are involved in delivering broad objectives?
Depending on the team structure, it can be delivery manager or engineering manager, the person who combines technical expertise and responsibility for delivery. Also, product people can help to define the high-level objectives that align with business goals. Evaluating developers against OKRs is a tricky thing. OKRs are mostly designed to measure team success, not individual output, so they should not be directly mapped to individual performance reviews. Instead, we can measure individual contribution to the overall team key result, which sometimes can be great even if the overall OKR is missed. Complement OKRs with behavioral metrics like initiatives, communication, mentorship, and problem-solving skills.
I see. And could you give an example of concrete project where you applied product engineering practices at the team level and explain how it impacted delivery? What result did it bring?
It was several years ago when we had an IoT project. The mobile application should control smart home devices like motion sensors, smart lights, and so on. The initial ask from the client was to add several features to the application and improve performance, as it was insufficient and frustrating for users. After careful investigation and much testing, it was clear that the root cause of bad performance was that the app was a hybrid and developed using the PhoneGap JavaScript-based framework. The most consistent solution would be to rewrite the app from scratch as pure native. But the client had neither the budget nor the time for that. We had a brainstorming session with the whole development team and product managers. And during this session, one of our senior engineers proposed an elegant solution that combined a hybrid app with pure native libraries. The idea was innovative and bright. We persuaded client to give it a try and implemented it in less than a month, while rewriting the app would require 6 or 7 months. App performance improved significantly. The author and main developer of the idea got much respect from the client and from internal management, substantial salary bonus, and good topic for conference talk.
The Agile Redemption.
Maxim, we're getting to the end, so I'd like to run a short lightning round, just 3 quick questions, and I'll ask you to give a brief, practical answers. Does that work for you?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, let's do it. First one. When fast delivery is critical, developers often find it hard to think deeply and make long-term product decisions. How can we avoid risks in situations where projects are frequently done under deadline pressure?
Firstly, the main and most important architectural and product decisions are usually taken on an initial stage of the project, where the pressure is not so hard. Secondly, the way of thinking and communication makes a difference. Each engineer should not be afraid to think deeply and to share the results of their thinking with the team, including management. Even if something reasonable is not taken to the project immediately because of deadline pressure, it can be recorded and kept for the future. In general, the proper way of thinking and the proper way of communication are important elements of engineering maturity.
Okay. Martin Fowler talks about a shared roadmap, while Fibery suggests splitting product and engineering roadmaps. Which approach engages engineers best, from your opinion?
I'm against splitting roadmaps. I would recommend leaving a single shared roadmap, but creating special user stories that accumulate tasks like tech debt, code health, innovative frameworks, and so on. We can also try to plan sprints using 3+1 methodology, where 3 consecutive sprints are product outcome and the 4th sprint is the engineering outcome.
Some say that before QA became a separate role, developers built quality in themselves or paid later by fixing bugs. Now it may seem to some that responsibility has weakened, and they argue it should return to developers. What's your take on this?
Frankly, I'm skeptical about this for 3 reasons. First, developers know the code too well and subconsciously avoid edge cases, while QA looks exactly for those failures. Second, the developer's mindset is to build while the tester's mindset is to break. And third, there are specific testing practices and tools that no developer has studied.
Maxim, we had no doubt it would be insightful to have you on the show, and I'm sure our listeners will agree. Thanks a lot for sharing your expertise and practical insights today. It was a great conversation. Thanks for taking the time to talk with us. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to Agile Redemption on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, or SoundCloud. If comments are open where you are listening, tell us. Do you see the same gap between tickets and user value in your teams? How do you deal with it? We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. And that's it for now. I am Antonuk. See you soon in the next episode.
The Agile Redemption.